Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Normally at this point, I say welcome to the two rabbis, and there'll be one on the way. But actually, Mendel's here before we start, so that's amazing. So we are in fact 4-8, and we are hoping that this idea of having three of us tackle one particular subject from different angles is something which appeals. We've got a nice full room, which is nice, so must be doing something right, I guess, or else you've got nothing else better to do. So we will be hopefully doing, yes, thank you, Barbara. Everybody should put their phones on silent, please. We hopefully will be doing programs like this from time to time. And it's very nice to see you all here, and I can see that there are people from all over, not just our locals, so it's very nice to see the locals and the not so local. Almost sort of, the last minute, this evening is dedicated to Itai Chen, Hashem Yikom Damav, one of our local boys. Had his bar mitzvah in this shul, had his aliyah, the Torah, the Shabbat before his enlistment, and we all blessed him that he should have a successful and safe service. Alas, that wasn't to be. And those of you who are here on Friday will not fail to be moved by the experience of many hundreds. I don't know how many people were here, but many hundreds of people were here to pay their respects, not just to Itai, but also to his amazing family. Rabbi, his father, contacted me today. This is the measure of the man. He contacted me to apologize that he won't be here tonight, to thank you all in person for all the prayers and the efforts and the learning that we have done and will do in Itai's name. He's started again today on his campaign to bring the hostages home. He's in Jerusalem tonight at a meeting, so he's not here tonight. He had intended to come, and quite amazingly, he sends his apologies and his thanks to all of us for everything that we continue to do, Le'iloi Nishmat Itai, and to help bring back Itai and, of course, all the other 133 other hostages which remain in captivity. So we're going to look at, obviously, we're going to look at Purim. I'm going to look at it from an angle which I suspect most of you won't have looked at it from this angle before. Purim is one of those things which is probably the most multifaceted story that we have in our whole calendar. Everybody knows the story of Purim. We learned it when we were in kindergarten as kids, and that story, which is basically a fairy story, isn't it? When you're a child, it's a fairy story. You've got a princess, you've got a wicked king, you've got a bumbling king, you've got a wicked man, you've got a good man, boo, boo, Haman, yeah? And then you've got the beautiful princess. It could easily be a fairy story. And when we're younger, that's what it seems to be to us, to be a fairy story. When we get a bit older, we understand that there are all sorts of hidden messages going on in the Megilah. We see that there is the hidden hand of God. God's name isn't mentioned in the Megilah, but it's there working behind the scenes. It's a message for us to remember that if we don't see God's hand, it's there working behind the scenes. It could be seen as a paradigm for how to behave in exile. It's an exile story. It takes place in exile in Bavel, Persia, and in Shushan. And it could be seen as a way of teaching us how to behave in exile. And all of those things we're familiar with. As we get older, we see each year we might see something different, might see a little point here and a little point there. But I want to look at this Purim story today from a completely different angle. I want to look at it from the political angle of what was going on in Persia at the time. And I wish that this material was my own. It isn't. I dedicate my part of this shiur, as well as to Itai, I dedicate this shiur to a man who I've met perhaps 3 or 4 times in person. And he doesn't really know who I am. I mean, in fact, I'm sure he doesn't know who I am at all. But he is probably the single person who is responsible for everything that I have taught or learned here in the last 12 or 13 years that I've been here. He is the single person who is responsible for that. And that is a man called Rabbi David Foreman. Some of you may be familiar with him. And the material that I'm going to present to you tonight is just a teeny little bit out of this book here called The Queen You Thought You Knew, by Rabbi David Foreman. He's a genius, and I hope that I'm able to do justice to the material, which is all coming from his book. So we're going to look at Purim from the political angle, from the idea of what was going on in high society in Persia at the time. There are some handouts. I didn't print out enough because, well, I'm too mean really to waste all the ink and the paper, but I didn't think we'd have so many people, so you'll have to share. It doesn't matter if you haven't got it because I'm going to read it out anyway. Through this handout, you will see various questions throughout of it, and I'm just going to read you out the questions before we start. These are the kind of things that we're going to look at. Question 1, why would the king ask Vashti to display herself so publicly with her crown? What was the point of that? Question 2, why does the Megilah go into such a Megilah about all the pomp and ceremony of the parties of Achashverosh? Question 3, why does Mordechai instruct Esther not to tell where she came from? And how does she get away with it? Question 4, and this is really the big one. I'm sure you've thought of this question. When Esther goes to the king and he holds out his golden scepter and says, yes, you can come in. Because remember, if she doesn't get that, off with her head. She comes in and he says to her, Esther, whatever it is that you want, you can have anything you want up to half my kingdom. Why doesn't she say there and then what she wants? Why does she faff around saying, come to a party tomorrow, come to a party the next day? Surely she's going to lose that opportunity. She's never going to have a better opportunity than he says, Esther, come in. I'll give you anything you want up to half my kingdom. Why doesn't she grasp the nettle, as it were, at that point? Next question. Esther says, if it please the king, I would like to make him to come to a party. Let the king and Haman come to a party today that I have prepared for him. Who is him? Who is Esther referring to? That's question number 5. Question number 6 is, why does the king ask Haman to lead Mordechai on the horse? It's not a job for a prime minister, it's a job for a stable boy. Why does the king ask Haman to do it? And question 7, a very interesting question. When Achashverosh went off into the garden after Esther had identified Haman as the culprit of this terrible plot, what did Haman say to Queen Esther while the king was in the garden? That would have been a very interesting conversation to hear. What might that have been? Those are the questions that I'm going to try and address in the next 20-25 minutes. So let's start at the beginning. The king has a problem. The king's problem is starting right from the very first pasuk of the Megilah. Source 1. Vayhi b'mei Achashverosh, and it was in the days of Achashverosh. Which Achashverosh? Hu Achashverosh hamolech mehodu ad Kush. This is the king who was reigning from Hodu ad Kush, India to Ethiopia. 127 provinces. That's his problem. How on earth do you keep control over 127 provinces? How do you run such an empire? How do you keep control of such an empire? Some of us struggle even with ourselves or our families or our communities. The 127 provinces. How did he do it? Well, we are led to believe throughout the Megilah, one of the facets that we see is that Ahasuerus was a bit of an idiot, a bit of a fool. But he was no fool. He was not such a fool. First of all, you don't get to be king of 127 provinces if you're an idiot. And he was no idiot. Have a look at source number 2. A couple of psukim later, we learn how he decided to keep control of his empire. Bishnat shalosh lamalacho, in the 3rd year of his reign, asam mishter lachol sarav va'avadav. He made a party for all of his princes, his ministers, and his servants. Chayil parasu madai. This is very, very important. Chayil, we all know what chayil is. Chayal, the army. The army top brass were there. Hapartamim, the famous people, the nobles, the Sarei Hamadinot, the princes of the provinces, all the knackers, all the big shots from all the 127 provinces came to this party. That was a piece of brilliant psychology from Ahasuerus. Because if you're one of those knackers, you're one of those nobles, you're one of those princes from the provinces, or you're one of the army top brass, and you are fated with an E thingamajig, not an A. Yeah, you are fated. You go to the fate, and you are given free alcohol. We learned a bit later on there was flowing with alcohol. Not only that, you were almost forced to drink alcohol, and there was food and drink. It was fabulous. And you go to this fantastic party, and you're made a big fuss of, and you are there as the representative of your little shtetl, 127 shtetl there that he's in charge of, and you're in charge, and you go back to your little place, and they say, no, what's he like, this Ahasuerus? What's this empire like that we're under these days? Because remember, empires changed. Babylon, Persia, Egypt. And they say, it's fabulous. It's fantastic. This guy's the best. We had the best time. And he really cares about us. He gave us all the things that we could possibly want for free. It was wonderful. And he's got them on side. So the party was the method of Ahasuerus keeping them on side. And then what happens is it starts to go a bit, I nearly said belly up, but it's not quite an appropriate phrase because I'm talking about Vashti. Vashti is asked to come along at the end of the party, the very last day, the 7th day of the last party. He orders 7 people to go and get Vashti. And we list who they are. And these are the 7 most important people. These are the inner cabinet. Okay, he didn't just send some Nochschlepper to go and get Vashti. He sent the entire cabinet. Go and get Vashti. And Vashti was to come. What do we know about Vashti when she arrived? She didn't arrive. She didn't come. What she was meant to arrive. What do we know about her? What was she wearing? Well, some say nothing, right? But she wasn't wearing nothing. What was she to wear? The crown. Okay. The only thing Ahasuerus says, bring her wearing a crown. Now, whether she was wearing nothing but her crown or whether she was wearing a regal dress, we don't know. We don't know. But we do know that Ahasuerus wanted her to come with the crown. Okay? The crown is important. Verse chapter 1, Pasuk 11, source 3, Lahavi et Vashti Malka lifnei hamelech beketer malchut, to come with the crown of the kingdom. Laharot hamim vasarem et yofiah ki tovat merehi, to show them how beautiful she was. Now, she didn't need to wear her crown to show how beautiful she was. She was beautiful with her crown or without her crown. Why the crown? Because the queen embodies the state. Think about Hamlet, those of you who are Shakespeare scholars. What does Shakespeare call the king in Hamlet, the various different kings? He calls him Denmark, Norway. The name of the king is the name of the place. The king represents the place, and the queen is the feminine embodiment of the state. And that's why she had to wear the crown. Ahasuerus, drunk he may have been, but he was on the ball enough to know what he was doing. He wanted Vashti to come, beautiful woman, wearing the crown, showing all these people from 127 states how beautiful their queen is, how wonderful, how pure, how marvelous the state is that they are part of now. It was all part of the feel-good factor. But it all went wrong, of course, because Vashti refused to come. Now, that's bad news because presumably everybody over there was told, ta-da! And now for the final thing of the party, I present to you Vashti Hamalka. Drum roll, garnished. She doesn't come. How's the king going to feel? He's going to feel incredibly angry because he's going to be embarrassed in front of everybody because he's just announced his queen and his queen says, I ain't coming. And that's why he had to get rid of her. Now, we see a bit later on that he actually regrets getting rid of her. We say when the king's anger settled down, he remembered what he'd done to Vashti and he thought, oh my goodness, what did I do that for? I quite liked her. And it's too late. And of course, the reason is because his advisor says, no, you've got to get rid of her. Because if you don't, everybody will look at her and say, we don't have to listen to our husbands either. Up with her head. So we don't actually know that she's killed, but she's removed from the picture. So now he's got a problem. He's got to find another queen. And he's got to find a queen who represents what we'll call, or Rabbi David Foreman calls, Mother Persia. He needs somebody that represents Mother Persia. Now, when Esther is chosen, we are not told anything more. We're not told she's the most beautiful of all of them. What we're told is, she won grace and favor more than all the other maidens. She was a nice girl. Okay. And she has the crown put on her. Now, source number 5, Esther would not tell her lineage or her nationality. As Mordechai had commanded her, don't tell who you are. Now, remember our questions. We've already answered question number 1 and 2, I think. Question number 1 was, why would the king ask Vashti to display herself with the crown? Because he wanted to display her as Mother Persia. Question 2, why does the Megilah describe the pomp and ceremony? For the reasons that we said, to impress the knackers. Now, the next question, why does Mordechai say, don't say who you are? And how did she get away with it? Imagine the conversation. Mordechai says, no, Esther, you're the queen now. You're the queen of all of Persia, 127 states. But where are you from? Who are you? Tell me a little bit about yourself. And she said, what does it matter where I'm from? You know, well, let's talk about the future. Let's not talk about the past. I'm with you now, Ahasuerus. We've got our life together in front of us. Doesn't matter where it came from. I'm the girl from nowhere. And that's the image that she wanted to present, as if she was the girl from nowhere who now represents the whole of Mother Persia. Because that's a wonderful thing for Ahasuerus to be able to say to all his 127 states, you know what? Esther, my wonderful queen, she has no noble blood. She's not the daughter of an emperor here, and she's not a daughter of a pharaoh there. She's the girl from nowhere. Any of you in any of these 127 countries, you could become queen, because we are a multicultural, wonderful, equal opportunities empire. That's what he wants to do, because he wants to get everybody on board, because 127 states is almost impossible to manage without somebody coming along and rebelling. So it suits him, actually. Esther's idea that she is the girl from nowhere, but now she's Mother Persia, suits her fine, and it suits him fine. So he goes along with it. Fine. Very nice. Now, so far, we've set the scene. Esther has got her place with the king. He's happy with her. She does the job. She goes onto stage. She smiles. I dare say she didn't go naked, but she went with a crown and whenever it was necessary. And she smiled and she did all the things. And she was Mother Persia. Rabbi Foreman describes her as the Lady of Persia. And he makes a comparison, which of course somebody like me wouldn't really understand, with the Statue of Liberty. You know, the Lady of New York there stood there with a hand up there with a lantern, welcoming everybody in. This is how he sees Esther as in Persia. So everything's going hunky dory, and then we know in the background what's going on. Haman has his spat with Mordechai, which, by the way, is the only reason he wanted to kill the Jews. Was the only reason he wanted to kill the Jews. He had nothing against the Jews. He had something against Mordechai. Mordechai would not bow down to him. And we're told that Mordechai said it wasn't good enough just to kill Mordechai. He wanted to get rid of all of them. Lunatic. Okay. We see this, we saw this in the Second World War, where Hitler did things which was against his own benefit in the war effort to kill more Jews. This was Haman did the same thing. He wasn't satisfied anymore just to get Mordechai. He wanted to get them all. And we know that's been going on the side. And now we're at the stage where Esther comes in, having been told by Mordechai, right, this is it. This must be why. Who knows? Maybe this is why you were made the queen in the first place. Now you have to stand up and be counted, Esther. So she goes in and the king lifts up his scepter and she comes in. And the question remains, why did she not say what she wanted straight away when he says, I'll give you up to half my kingdom, you're my favorite queen and all that stuff? She says, what does she say? Source 6, Esther, if it pleases the king, come to the party which I have prepared for him. Okay. And the question was, him. Who is him? That is what Rabbi Foreman calls a dangling pronoun. Right? A dangling pronoun. We don't know who that him is. And Achashverosh does not know who that him is. If you're Achashverosh and you have a beautiful queen, your favorite queen even, Mother Persia, and she says, I want you to come to a party. I'm going to make an intimate banquet for you and me and him and somebody else and Haman. And she says, I'm making a party. I want the king and Haman to come to a party that I am making for him. Achashverosh starts thinking, well, who's this party for? Is it for me? Or is it for Haman? Is there something going on here between Esther and Haman? And Esther plays this. So she leaves Achashverosh in some doubt as to what is going on here. Now, Philip, this is especially for you, okay? You're not allowed to talk about it, but it's especially for you, because Rabbi Foreman mentions it, and I thought of you immediately. If you're doing martial arts, okay, of which I know nothing, actually that's not true. I've known Philip for 12 years. I know lots about martial arts because he's taught me lots. One thing I do know is that you use the momentum of the attacker to your benefit. In other words, somebody comes at you full on, you don't go full on back at them. What you do is you somehow or other sidestep and use their momentum to your advantage. And that's what Esther was doing here. She has a problem now because what does she have to do? What has Mordechai told her to do? Mordechai has told her to tell the king who she is, finally, that she's a Jew. And what does that do? It completely spoils the Mother Persia image that she has created and that she has developed over this time. So now she's got a problem because she's now going to have to go back on everything that she said. So she uses the momentum here she creates a momentum. She creates this idea in Achashverosh's mind that Haman is dallying with the queen, that he has eyes for the queen and that he's trying to, and that maybe she's involved in it as well, but she doesn't quite give it away. She just leaves it dangling there with that pronoun. And then she says, the next day, she makes another party And she says, if I have found favor in the eyes of the king, it pleases the king, and you want to give me my petition and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I will make, Esther, lahem, for them. So now you're Achashverosh, and you think, you go to the first banquet and you think, him or me? Nah, it must be me. When she said him, it must be me. She's speaking in the third person because that's what you do to a king. It's me. I don't have to worry about Haman. Okay? And he comes to the next party and it's them. Haman is now at least on the same level as the king. They're coming together. So what's the king worried about? He's worried that somebody is going, and that person being Haman, is trying to take his queen away from him, his precious Esther, Mother Persia. It's not surprising, therefore, Balayla Hahu Nadadash Natamelech. Not surprising that night the king could not sleep. Of course he couldn't sleep. He's tossing and turning over and over in his head. Maybe Haman and Esther have got something going here. What about Haman's concerns? That was the king's concern. What about Haman's concern? Haman's concern is only one thing. He says to his wife and his kids and everybody else, I am the bee's knees. I'm the only one invited to this party with the king. I have got riches like you've never seen. I've got covered like you've never seen. Source number 9. This is all worth nothing to me. As long as I see that horrible Jew, that Mordechai, sitting at the king's gate, everything else I've got is worth nothing. And so what does his wife say? Haman, calm down. Tell you what, why don't you sleep on it, make some gallows, and in the morning, go to the king and ask the king to get rid of Mordechai and you can hang him on the gallows. And he feels, okay, that's a good idea. But he can't even wait till the morning. He's got ADHD. He can't wait till the morning. He has to get up straight away in the middle of the night. And he goes to the king and he wants to ask him to hang Mordechai. But the king's not having it. The king is worried. He's tossing and turning. And who turns up in the middle of the night? Haman. What person turns up in the middle of the night? A person who wants to kill you. Normal people don't turn up in the middle of the night and knock on your door. He didn't even knock on the door. He stood outside in the courtyard, like casing the joint kind of thing. Haman thinks, Achashverosh thinks, Haman's out to kill him. Not only does he want to take my wife, he wants to take my kingdom as well. And then he asks Haman, what should we do with this person who we want to honor? And Haman says to himself, well, it must be me. And so what does he say? Source number 11. Let them bring the royal raiment that the king wore, and the horse that the king rode upon. The royal crown shall be on his head. And let the king's most noble princes, let them dress. 5 times he uses this idea of king and noble for himself. And Achashverosh knew that. So now he thinks, Haman's after my wife, he's after my kingdom. And so that's why he tells Haman to go and do it to Mordechai himself, to bring him down a peg or 3. Okay? It's not you, Haman. You are just a guy that's going to lead through the streets, somebody who tried to save my life, who did save my life. You, on the other hand, no, I'm not so sure about you, Haman. You might actually be trying to take my life. So now the momentum is building up against Haman. And that's where Esther comes along at the second party and says, if I've found favor in your eyes, O king, and if it pleases the king, may my life be given to me. I am the one that's in danger here. He said, she makes it personal because she can't make it a moral argument because there is no moral argument. Achashverosh is not interested in a moral argument. We know that because when Haman said, let's kill these people, it's not worth it to you, king, to keep these people. They're a weirdo people. They're all over the place. They don't keep your laws. They've got their own peculiar minhagim. It's not worth it. He doesn't even ask who they are. Achashverosh he's not even interested. He doesn't even say, That's interesting. Who are these people you want to kill? He just says, oh, here's my ring. Go and do whatever you want with them. He's not interested. He has no moral grounds for undoing the decree. So Esther has to use the personal grounds. My life, she says. Oh, and by the way, also my people. So now he gets very angry because he now sees, I got it all wrong. It's not that he wants to necessarily have an affair with the queen. He wants to kill the queen. He wants to take my mother Persia away from me. And he also wants my crown. We know that from last night, from his shenanigans in the middle of the night. So what does he do? Ahasuerus gets up, angry, really angry, goes into the garden to cool off, and Haman makes the fatal mistake. He falls at Esther's feet on the couch there. She's lying on the couch, and he falls at her feet to beg for mercy. The king comes in and sees what he wants to see. But another bit of psychology going on here on the Megilah. What are the chances that that situation where Haman is just been told by the queen to the king that he wants to kill her, and he's really angry, the king? What are the chances that Haman would choose that particular time to rape the queen? Zero. Zero. It's the last thing he's going to do. But the king comes in, sees him begging for mercy, and sees what he wants to see, which is that Haman, he thinks, is trying to conquer the queen. And he uses that expression, lichvosh, to conquer, meaning to conquer the queen, and with it my kingdom. And because Ahasuerus, if nothing else, is a hothead, he's not a fool, but he is a hothead, Charvona comes along and says, hey, king, there's these gallows here that Haman has made, and you know who he made them for? He made them for that Mordechai guy who saved your life. Finished. Hang him. And so that is the end of Haman. Now, you would think, wouldn't you, and I'm sure you thought this, and I'm finishing now, I've just kept up to my 30 minutes. Stuart's looking at me with daggers there. I've nearly finished, Stuart. Okay. You would think, and I would think, and we all thought, don't we, every year when we read the Megilah, when Mordechai is now the prime minister, and Haman is hanged, and his 10 sons are hanged, and you think, wow, what a great story, and they all lived happily ever after. We've got another 3 boring chapters left, right? It's all boring after that. All we're doing is looking on. Where's the next Haman where we can go, woo, right? What's all that about? What's the rest of that story all about? Why doesn't the Megilah end at that particular point? Everything works out very nicely. Haman's gone. Mordechai's the prime minister. Esther's the queen again. Ahasuerus has calmed down, and all lived happily ever after. But we've got 3 more chapters. But that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have to wait for another time. One question.
The year after, Ahasuerus had another mad episode, and he popped a lot of it. Nobody knows.
For another day. Okay. We're gonna. We're just on time now, so we're gonna have literally. Anybody wants to go to the bathroom or wants to grab a drink, 3 minutes, and then we're going to start with the next lecture.